On May 20th, Luna coaxed me into having a cesarean section to give birth to the baby in advance. After the anesthetic wore off, I vaguely heard him holding our daughter and tenderly calling her Vivian. That was the name of his deceased first love. My eyes were filled with rage. The wound on my abdomen are open. And eventually, I had a massive hemorrhage and couldn't be saved. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the age of 18. Luna squeezed into the military training formation and ostentatiously held an umbrella to shield me from the sun. He smiled and said, "Freshman, you look so much like my future girlfriend." I floated in Midra, watching my body on the hospital bed gushing with blood. Luna held our daughter without saying a word, his body trembling continuously. Luna's mother grabbed the doctor's arm and cursed at him for being an incompetent doctor. Before being dragged out, she was still shouting that if the baby didn't have milk to drink, she wouldn't let the hospital off. HH. Was I just a wet nurse? My mother crawled on the ground in a distorted manner. I had never seen her so devastated, even though my father had been paralyzed for so many years. I suddenly felt it was a bit ridiculous. She must be very sad that the cash cow was gone, right? The index on the monitor gradually became a straight line. I saw Luna staring blankly at our daughter's face, slowly reaching out to touch it, and revealing an infatuated and eerie smile. "Vivian, it's just the two of us left. No one can stop us from being together in this lifetime." My stomach churned, and I suddenly remembered the time when I was pregnant. Luna often talked to my belly to himself. They say that a daughter is her father's little lover in his previous life. The baby must love me so much that she chose to come into this world. At that time, I thought he would definitely be a good father, and I even felt fortunate about my choice. But now it seems that he is far from being a good father. He is clearly a perverted scumbag who treats his own daughter as a substitute for his first love. Before my last bit of consciousness disappeared, I stared at Luna resentfully, determined to remember this face even if I became a vengeful ghost. After a violent fit of nausea, I finally vomited. I suddenly opened my eyes, and the young boy in front of me had all my vomit on his clothes. He looked at me in shock. This face that I firmly remembered before I died was clearly that of a teenage Luna. I stood there stunned, surrounded by a circle of freshmen in military training uniforms. The drill instructor dispersed the crowd and told me to go and rest under a tree nearby. Luna held an umbrella for me attentively, but I quickly dodged him. I roared at him, "Get lost. You pervert." Luna was taken aback for a moment and then suddenly laughed. "You can still shout so loudly. It seems that you're okay. It's just heatstroke. Have a good rest." I stared at him, my eyes as if they could burn with fire. It was the same in my previous life. When I first entered university as a freshman, he held an umbrella and squeezed into the military training formation where we were standing at attention. He stood beside me very ostentatiously and specifically held the umbrella for me alone. He even had the nerve to confess, "Freshman, you look so much like my future girlfriend." The surrounding classmates kept cheering. Yo 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 yo. I was young and shy and hadn't experienced much emotional turmoil. I was easily attracted by his enthusiasm. At that time, my father had a car accident and became paralyzed, and my mother was very tired from taking care of him. Since the winter vacation of my senior year of high school, I had been working day and night to earn money, wanting to share more of the burden for my mother. His thoughtfulness gave me a sense of support invisibly. I was so infatuated with him that for 4 years, I worked desperately without paying much attention to my studies, while falling deeper into Luna's trivial concerns. Less than 2 years after graduation, I actually got pregnant before getting married. As a result, I ended up with such an absurd outcome. Now that I think about it, I wish I could knock myself out for what I did back then. While I was thinking, my mother called. I answered the phone, and she was asking for money again. She said that the medical expenses for my father were not enough, and the person who caused the accident was still at large, with no one to compensate. My mother said tearfully, "Luna, Mom doesn't have the ability. I can only rely on you." Before I could say anything, Leo's voice came from the receiver. "You've been in Shanghai for a month. You must have earned several thousand yuan by now. Aren't you ashamed that you haven't sent a single cent home? I frowned. Had this little brat always been so rude to me? His sister? I had little communication with him in my previous life and had actually missed the best opportunity to teach him a lesson. I licked my back molars and said viciously, "Stop morally kidnapping me. You've been lying at home and dropped out of school for a year. What? Are you paralyzed too?" Leo stammered for a moment and then said bravely, "I'm just taking care of Dad." "It's not like you're so selfish. You still ran away to study even though Dad is paralyzed." Me, having fulfilled my obsession. Selfish? Don't think I don't know. Not long after my father became paralyzed, they had already secretly raised hundreds of thousands of yuan. The surgical and follow-up treatment costs were already sufficient. They even managed to save up the down payment for a house in the county town for Leo. It wasn't until the day he moved into his new house that I found out about this from Leo's misposted WeChat moments. At that time, I was almost due to give birth, and I cried so much that the baby moved violently. Luna said that the baby was eager to be the witness of our love and used this as an excuse to make me have a cesarean section to give birth to the baby in advance on May 20th. I was too soft-hearted and selfless. Being trapped by both family affection and love. And I carried a lot of debts at such a young age. I said word by word into the phone, "Leo, I advise you to be careful with your words and actions. Taking advantage of others, and then playing innocent will get you killed by me." Before the TCH sound on the other end of the line ended, I decisively hung up the phone. This time, I'm going to be a heartless money-making machine. But every penny I earn will be at my own disposal. Don't even think about taking what you shouldn't from me. Luna slowly said, "Don't be angry with someone who isn't worth it. Even if that person is family." I gave him a fierce glare, "It's none of your business." I patted my butt and walked into the military training formation. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Luna standing under the tree thoughtfully for a while. Then silently putting away the umbrella and leaving. The military training ended soon, and I had a rather restless period. Luna wandered around in front of me every day. He sent me milk tea one day, and a small flower the next. He accompanied me to class and picked me up after class. But I drove him away with my sharp words every time. Gradually, having fulfilled my obsession, my bad reputation spread in the school. The last day of September was my birthday. There weren't many classes that day, and the classmates who were going home or traveling had left one after another. I dawdled in the dormitory, packing my things, planning to go to the suburbs to look at the venue during the National Day holiday. In the past 2 years, short video live streaming had just emerged, and the trend of live commerce was booming. I was going to seize this opportunity. Suddenly, there were exclamations from downstairs, and my roommate called me to go down quickly. My heart skipped a beat, and I remembered that on this day in my previous life, Luna had celebrated my birthday and confessed to me downstairs in the dormitory. I went downstairs with a cold face and, as expected, saw Luna holding a big cake and a large bouquet of roses. Standing there looking a bit nervous. I didn't know where so many people came from. There was a huge crowd, blocking the road in front of the dormitory building tightly. Was he using a masked tactic to morally kidnap me? I crossed my arms irritably. "Speak." Luna took out a microphone from his pants pocket and was just about to speak. I snatched the microphone from him and motioned for him. "Just say it like this. I can hear you." Luna then took out a small portable microphone from his shirt pocket and started adjusting it. I was stunned. So he was really going to put me on the spot today. Right? Luna's voice came through the quality buzzing of the small microphone. "Luna. From the first moment I saw you, I fell in love with you. Today is the first birthday I'm spending with you. And I want to spend every birthday with you in the future. Let's be together. Is that all?" I thought there would be a more touching and heartfelt speech. How on earth did these two inexplicable sentences touch me in my previous life? I was extremely shocked inside. But the people around me seemed to be under some kind of spell, cheering even louder than each other. "Say yes. Say yes." Luna looked at me full of affection and handed the cake to me. I slowly took it, then held it up high and lightly smashed the whole cake onto Luna's face. The crowd fell silent instantly. I took the small microphone and smiled at Luna. "Thank you, Clyde. for your affection. I don't have anything good to give back to you. So, let me treat you to the cake. You won't reject me. The birthday girl. Will you? Luna swayed for a moment but quickly steadied himself. He smiled and replied, no. I nodded in satisfaction. Affirming his acting skills, that's good. Eat more. Don't waste it. After saying that, I turned around and went back to the dormitory. The noise downstairs didn't start up again until I stepped into the dormitory. It was already 3 days later when I finished my work in the suburbs and returned to school. The video of that day had already spread widely on the school forum, the confession wall, and various WeChat groups. Everyone was accusing me of being haughty and trampling on others' sincere feelings. Some female classmates stood up very righteously to prove how bad a person Clyde was. But I just didn't appreciate it. Some male classmates used veiled and insulting words to abuse me. I browsed through these contents with great interest, as if I was admiring their clear yet stupid crystal-like brains. As I was browsing, I suddenly found a person named Vivian 520, who stood out among the monotonous comments with her refreshing and unique views. She didn't follow the trend to angrily condemn me. Instead, she spoke up for me. There's no rule that you have to say yes when someone confesses to you. If I were confessed to by such an excellent person in public, I would definitely be at a loss and make an uncontrollable reaction too. Luna, who had been silent for 3 days, suddenly also started to voice his opinion. I was too hasty in this matter. Please don't attack the person involved anymore. Let's stop here. Thank you. This was getting interesting. In my previous life, I had only heard of the famous name of Luna's deceased first love, Vivian, but I had never met her. Since she was still alive at this time, why did Luna still want to be with me? My actions didn't discourage Luna. He still tried his best to play the role of a suitor and insisted on being with me. Apart from attending regular classes, I didn't join any clubs or the student union in the school. I rushed back and forth between the school and the suburbs every day. I also took the time to investigate all the garment factories in the surrounding cities, and was so busy that I hardly had time to rest. I even spent the spring festival in the dormitory. And I prevaricated with her by saying that I was working to earn money. When she heard that I was working hard to make money, she didn't say much, just repeatedly saying that the medical expenses for my father were not enough and hinting that I should send money. I was so angry when I heard this that I couldn't help but say, ask Leo to earn money. He has hands and feet. What can't he do? My mother mumbled, your younger brother is still a child. If he goes to work, wouldn't he be a child laborer? Then let him take care of Dad at home. And you can go to work, can't you? My mother repeated in disbelief, you, how could you be like this? But she couldn't say anything else that was meaningful. In the spring of the following year, I took out a loan relying on the preferential policies for college students' entrepreneurship and set up the studio in an orderly manner. Leo came to my school to look for me once. To be precise, he had to come to me. He came to Shanghai for a trip with those cronies. He pretended to be a wealthy person and treated them, but he was scared out of his wits by the bill. After emptying his wallet to pay the bill, he didn't have enough money to buy a ticket to go home. He didn't dare to ask his mother for money, so he could only be urged by his friends to come to me. I was having lunch in the cafeteria. A serving of shredded potatoes with vinegar and chili, a bowl of rice, and a bowl of free clear soup were my special meal for a treat. I brought the soup in front of him and said, I don't have any money for you, but I have enough soup. Drink your fill and then get lost quickly. Leo lost face in front of his friends and felt a bit embarrassed. He raised his hand and knocked over my bowl of rice. The teachers and students eating around all looked over, and the murmur of discussion gradually rose. I held back my anger, closed my eyes, stood up, and poured a bowl of soup over his head. Didn't your mother teach you not to waste food? Didn't your teacher teach you that every grain is the fruit of hard work? Leo jumped up suddenly and slapped the table hard. But he cowered under the gaze of everyone. In the end, he just pointed at my nose and threatened. You wait. I'm going to tell our parents. So what if he tells them? My father can't move, and my mother can only cry. That's exactly what I thought at that time. But the subsequent development really broadened my horizons. Of course, That's a story for later. At that time, the Internet College Students Innovation and Entrepreneurship Competition was about to be held. I took the initiative to find my professional teacher, presented a detailed planning proposal, and applied to participate in the competition. The collision of two new elements, Chinese-style trendy clothing and a virtual digital platform, was really novel at that time. The teacher quickly formed a participating team. To my surprise, besides me and a senior from another major who had already been recommended for postgraduate studies, Luna and Vivian were also in the team. I didn't really care. But some people were very uncomfortable. Every time the four of us worked together, Luna and Vivian would hold each other back. The two of them would always stay far apart. If they accidentally touched, they would quickly recoil as if they had been electrocuted. Not only me, but also Senior Su Zhang. You noticed something was amiss. Do you think they're trying to conceal something by doing this? I glanced at him, my eyebrows full of interest, and said, "You're perceptive." Su Zhang was puzzled and asked, "But didn't that guy Luna keep chasing you?" I smiled and said, "Who knows? Maybe some people just like to be greedy and want more than they have." Su Zhang nodded in understanding, pointed at Vivian, then at me, and said, "I get it. He couldn't get the one he really wanted, so he settled for the second best." The competition went very smoothly. When the summer vacation started, we successfully advanced to the national competition and represented our school to compete in another city. Vivian and I shared a hotel room, and Su Zhang and Luna shared another. In the middle of the night, the day before the final, Vivian sneaked out of the room. After a while, Su Zhang knocked on my door with his computer in his arms, and said mysteriously that he wanted to take me to the terrace to watch the fun. In the small garden downstairs, Luna and Vivian were hugging each other and crying. I leaned on the corridor railing, raised my eyebrows, and was a bit shocked. Are they really that aggrieved? So what's the story between you two? Hurry up and show me. But the two of them kept crying and didn't say a word. My legs were numb from squatting. And Su Zhang poked me. "Look at this." He pointed to a line of code on the computer screen for me to see. It was a section of the virtual digital platform we built for the competition, which was completed by Su Zhang and Luna together. I didn't understand code and was completely confused. Su Zhang explained it carefully. "Look at this line. It hides their names and a confession declaration." With this reminder, I suddenly realized the little trick of this couple. They really know how to play. Luna had never done such a thing for me in my previous life. The so-called romance of a science student was just a trick he scoffed at. It seemed that we had stepped into a life of mundane matters rather than love from a very early time. It was all about daily necessities like firewood, rice, oil, and salt, without any romance. But it didn't matter. A person like him wasn't worthy of the slightest bit of romantic sentiment from me. I shrugged and let out a soft laugh. Su Zhang looked at me in surprise and asked, "Aren't you angry?" I mean, he's lying to both of you." I pouted and said, "How do you know he's lying to both of us? What if they're in cahoots to deceive me?" Su Zhang fell silent. After a moment of silence, he said, "Are you interested in joining my postgraduate project in advance? I think you have great ideas and are very assertive." I patted him on the shoulder and said, "Then are you interested in joining my entrepreneurial team? I think you have great ability and vision." Su Zhang was even more shocked and asked, "You're starting a business?" I nodded and said, "Yes, having fulfilled my obsession. Our project for the competition is part of my entrepreneurial plan." He opened his mouth, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. "How many people are there in the team now?" I counted on my fingers and said, "If you join and we recruit another 28 people, there will be 30 people in total." Su Zhang was stunned for a moment and then laughed. I pouted and said, "What? Do you look down on small and micro enterprises?" Su Zhang looked at me with a smile and said, No. Future outstanding young entrepreneur. I'm looking forward to seeing your name on the Forbes Under 30 list." At that moment, the stars were shining in the sky. Su Zhang and I talked about our visions for the future. The crying and quarreling about love downstairs had long since turned into a tiny commotion. In the final, We won the gold award as we wished. After the celebration banquet, Suzanne and I planned to go back to school. And Vivian was going home. Luna hadn't made a decision yet. On the last day before we left, he finally reluctantly said that he would accompany me back to school. I raised my eyebrows and refused. No. Go wherever you like. Don't use the excuse of accompanying me. I don't need a bodyguard. Luna didn't say anything and silently followed us out. When we were about to leave the hotel, I saw a ragged homeless man in the corner of the entrance. His features were obscured by dirt and not very clear. But my intuition clearly told me that this was the hit-and-run driver who had crashed into my father. The blood in my body rushed to my head, and my fingers were trembling so much that I couldn't lift my bag. Suzanne naturally took the things from me and motioned for me to get in the car. I was rooted to the spot and couldn't move. I watched as that person walked past me and directly towards Luna. He knelt down with a thud and said to Luna in a trembling voice, "Son, save your father." Luna's body suddenly stiffened. Then, let out a low sigh. His first reaction was to take a look at me. Just this one look made my whole body tremble. And some string in my mind miraculously connected. Why was Luna so determined to be with me? Why was Vivian willing to endure humiliation and be a lover, in the background? Everything was probably because of this father who had a criminal record. If the family member of a criminal and the family member of the victim establish a marital relationship, Luna could avoid the condemnation of public morality, and there would be room for negotiation regarding compensation and punishment. Vivian was a smart person. True love never needs a marriage certificate to prove it. She could calmly marry someone else and pave the way for her future child to have the qualification to take the civil service examination, or apply for positions in public institutions. I couldn't help but want to applaud. These two people were really a perfect match. They could still make the most self-serving choice in such a desperate situation. I suddenly remembered the way Luna treated my daughter in my previous life. Do they want to love as if no one else is around? Don't even dream about it. I sneered in my heart and stared fixedly at this father and son. Luna seemed to sense something and hesitated for a moment. Clyde's father, who was kneeling on the ground, crawled over crying and hugged his leg. While crying, he wailed, "Give me some money. Son. I've been hungry for a long time. My cash was stolen. And I don't dare to use my phone. I can't survive like this." Luna took a half step back in a panic and said, "You've got the wrong person. I'm your father." Clyde's father urgently tugged at his hair, which was as messy as a chicken coop. "Clyde, don't you recognize me?" Luna turned around and tried to run. But his father held him tightly. Vivian, let out a low sigh, who had already gotten into the car in front, quickly got out of the car when she saw this. She came up and grabbed Clyde's father's hair and pulled it back. And then kicked him in the chest. With this series of moves, she actually rescued Luna. Unexpectedly, Clyde's father wasn't an easy target either. He stumbled and grabbed the ankles of the two of them. He directly dragged them both down. And the three of them fell to the ground together. He changed his previous cowardly kneeling posture and cursed Vivian viciously. "You bitch. What are you interfering for? You whore. If it weren't for you and her bastard father cheating my son and setting me up, would I be in this situation?" I was completely stunned. This was a blind spot by the hotel door. And there were tall floral and greenery gardens next to it. It was almost impossible to see what was going on inside from the outside. I thought the time was almost right. So I rushed forward, pretending that I had just seen it. I took out my phone and took several photos. Then I directly picked up a handful of cobblestones from the flower bed and threw them at Clyde's father one by one. But after all, my aim wasn't good. And many stones accidentally hit Luna and Vivian. The three of them howled in pain together. I threw the stones with all my strength and deliberately threatened and loudly. "How dare you hit people in broad daylight? I'll call the police and arrest you." "Don't call the police." The three people entangled on the ground and twisted in pain shouted at me in unison. I pretended to be anxious and said, "Why not call the police? He's endangering public security." The three of them, each with their own ulterior motives, stopped fighting and stammered without saying anything. Luna got up from the ground in a flash and came to me with a pale face. "Luna, please don't call the police. He got the wrong person. Just drive him away. I frowned and stared at him for a few seconds. And confirmed with him. Are you sure we don't need to call the police? Luna nodded repeatedly and said. No. No. I'm just unlucky to have met such a person. There's no need to trouble the police. I relented and said. I'm the leader of our project. And your safety is also my responsibility. If we don't call the police, then I have to tell the teacher. No need for that either. Look. I'm not even injured. We just won the award. So don't spoil the teacher's mood. Not injured? I looked at Luna's forehead and cheeks, which were all red and bruised from the cobblestones. I held back my laughter with great effort. I reluctantly agreed to him. All right then. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, I've taken pictures of the evidence of him grabbing you. If this person mistakes you again next time, I'll really call the police. Luna stood there as if turned to stone. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Not long after Suzanne and I got in the car, Luna also got in. I was a bit surprised. After what had happened, Luna and Vivian could still part ways so rationally and continue with their respective plans. They were really ruthless people capable of doing great things. I didn't plan to report the information about Clyde's father to the police. Even if Clyde's father was punished by law and my family received compensation, I probably still couldn't find relief. Having lived a life all over again, I've completely realized that it wasn't a home. It was a bottomless pit of greed. They could beg online behind my back and buy a house for Leo without my knowledge. In the future, they could also hide the matter of the compensation from me. Clyde's father was currently homeless and abandoned by everyone, which was the beginning of his retribution. And what I cared about the most was Luna. I needed him to keep pestering me. Suffering from the torture of not being able to be with his true love openly, and having no happy ending. I was waiting for him or her to reveal something incriminating. The car had been driving for a while. I closed my eyes to rest. But my mind became clearer and clearer. Suzanne seemed to sense that I wasn't asleep and brought up the topic as if by accident. That person shouldn't be Luna's father. I opened my eyes and asked, "What do you mean?" He opened a page on his phone and showed it to me. This is the information about Luna's mother. I took a quick look. His mother turned out to be a female entrepreneur. I never expected that Luna was actually from a wealthy family. So why was he pretending to be a poor guy who was self-reliant and willing to endure hardships in front of me? In my previous life, when I was exhausted from working part-time, Luna would always say with tears in his eyes, "Baby, you've worked so hard," and then split the rent, water, and electricity bills of the rental house with me on an AA basis. But in my eyes at that time, he was a down-to-earth man who was content with his life. Huh. How ironic. So unless his father has something shady going on, it's hard to believe that the down-and-out person is his father. Suzanne concluded meaningfully. I wasn't interested in sharing the dirty things about my family with others for the time being, so I just perfunctorily said, "Maybe." Suzanne was smart enough to stop this topic. After returning to school, I quickly attracted investment with the prestigious gold award from the internet competition. With sufficient startup capital, I hired several employees, and a live-streaming e-commerce business was carried out in full swing. Besides helping his supervisor with projects, Suzanne would also come to help out in his spare time. One of his main jobs was to intercept Luna for me. Throughout the summer vacation, Luna stayed closely around me, as if he was afraid that I would discover something from what had happened last time. Seeing that I was acting no different from usual, he stopped being overly cautious. By the end of the summer vacation, the studio had already started to make a profit. I assigned some work to my capable employees and prepared to focus on going back to school for classes. In my previous life, I threw my studies to the wind. After 4 years, I was still a manual laborer. I really wasted the tuition fees I earned from working so hard. This time, I applied to change my major in the second semester of my freshman year. I was going to study business administration in the new semester. However, I didn't expect that on the first day of school, my dormitory door was knocked on by an unexpected guest. It was Vivian. I didn't move to a new dormitory. My roommates from the original major had different class schedules from mine. So I was the only one in the dormitory at that time. She sat on my bed on her own, lifted her foot, and stepped on my bedsheet. This delinquent girl's appearance was completely different from her previous persona, being as calm as a chrysanthemum and kind and amiable. I frowned. Was she not pretending anymore? Well, after seeing with my own eyes how she beat up Clyde's father, she really could discard that persona in front of me. I crossed my arms and leaned against the cabinet. May I ask what brings you here? Vivian? Or should I say, Vivian with the username 520? Vivian looked at me and suddenly sneered. So you do know something. Luna swore that you didn't know anything. You two were just too obvious. It doesn't matter if you know. Yes. I just like Luna and he likes me. So what? I shrugged. It's nothing. I'm just curious. When Luna's confession failed last time, why did you speak up for me on the forum? She got up and sat on the chair. Actually, your reputation isn't important to me. And it wasn't important to Luna at that time either. But it's important to Luna after he's with you. After all, if your reputation is ruined, Luna will also lose face after being with you. Goodness. Was she so sure that I would definitely end up with Luna in the end? You really think so much about him. You're actually quite nice. I became interested and pulled a chair to sit next to her. Vivian obviously didn't expect me to do this and looked at me up and down in confusion a few times. What are you doing? I'm all ears. She suddenly stood up, took out a stack of photos from her bag, and stuffed them into my hands in a hurry. If you have time to listen to this, you might as well care more about your family. I glanced at the photos. They were of the landmark buildings in my hometown. Vivian regained her calmness. Come to think of it, I went on a trip during the summer vacation and accidentally took some interesting pictures. I thought you'd be really surprised. Didn't she go home for the summer vacation? Why did she go to my hometown instead? I flipped through the photos and suddenly saw the figure of my mother. Instantly, having fulfilled Leah, my scalp went numb. These two were really something. Their division of labor was so clear. One used the beauty trap, here referring to using his charm to keep an eye on me, and the other went to be a detective on the spot. He has a soft heart and feels guilty towards your family. He wants to be nice to you to atone for his father who hit and ran and paralyzed your father. But I don't have that kind of feeling. Vivian said through gritted teeth. Huh? It was like I was hearing a joke. Were these keywords really describing that scumbag Luna? I slowly put down the photos in my hand and said calmly to Vivian. Actually, I didn't know this part originally. Vivian was stunned. I mean, Nani, the part about his father being the hit-and-run driver. But I didn't expect that you were so honest and told me everything directly. Then I'll thank you for that. Vivian stumbled back a few steps, her face suddenly turning pale, and finally ran away as if fleeing. It wasn't fun. Why was she so easily frightened? However, the thanks were sincere. I've got something on you. I casually flipped through that stack of photos out of boredom. Suddenly, head felt my. I was shocked as if struck by lightning. I saw that in the corner of a landscape photo, my father was standing there fishing. My father, who was supposed to be paralyzed in bed. Or rather, the father who my mother had always said was paralyzed in bed, was standing there. On the eve of the National Day holiday half a month later, Luna came to celebrate my birthday again. Just like last year. There were flowers and a cake, and his self-proclaimed charming smile. I was slightly surprised. It seemed that Vivian hadn't told Luna that she had already spilled the beans. Luna greeted me attentively and came up. Luna, this is the second birthday we've spent together. I looked at the people coming and going at the dormitory door and led Luna to Lover's Slope. This was the place where the two of us used to stay the most when we were in love in my previous life. I got straight to the point. Vivian came to see me before. As soon as Luna heard this, he visibly tensed up. What did she want from you? Vivian is quite straightforward. If she said something crazy, please don't take it to heart. I knew he was anxious, but I wanted him to wait. I played for time. Actually, I struggled for a long time. After all, that matter was beyond my expectations. I never thought there would be such a complicated entanglement between us. And even our families. Luna swallowed hard and didn't dare to interrupt me. I glanced at him and continued. We've been friends. And I don't have the heart to hide it from you. Vivian said that one day she had a dream. In the dream, because of you, your father drove and hit my father, leaving him paralyzed, and then ran away. Later, she died. And after I married you, I also died. She said you were a jinx, bringing bad luck to everyone you got close to. I grabbed Luna's hand and looked at him earnestly. Luna, I don't believe these words. Is there some misunderstanding between you two? Or is Vivian trying to scare me and make me stay away from you? Luna's body trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. I knew that a seed of doubt had been planted in his heart. As long as there is one truth among 10,000 lies, those 10,000 lies can all become the truth. The collapse of trust only needs a crack. Moreover, everything I said was true. Luna left in a daze. I didn't have time to care about him. I was busy meeting up with Suzanne. After accidentally learning about my father's situation from Vivian, I took out almost all the money the studio had earned and scraped together the down payment for a luxury car. I asked Suzanne, who had a driver's license, to be the driver and accompany me back home. Along the way, heading for Feldweied Session, Suzanne didn't ask too many questions. And I didn't explain either. It seemed that from the very beginning, there was a tacit understanding between us that didn't need to be explicitly stated. I like smart people. That's why I was willing to ask him to accompany me to do this. In the village entrance in the afternoon, many idle middle-aged and elderly people were gathered together chatting. As soon as they saw the brand new luxury car, they all came over to take a look. I asked Suzanne to park the car at the village entrance for a while and opened the car window to show half of my face. Isn't this the girl from the Luna family? She hasn't been back for a year. Has she found a rich sugar daddy? TSK. TSK. Her father is still paralyzed in bed. But the daughter is driving a luxury car. What kind of evil did the old Luna family do? Oh, how unfilial. My eldest daughter-in-law is the same age as her. And she's already given birth to 3 children. I told you that girls shouldn't go too far away to study. Once they read too many books, they'll go bad. I didn't care about what they said. But Suzanne couldn't stand it. He suddenly honked the horn several times, got out of the car, leaned against the car body, and lit a cigarette, wanting them to shut up with his silence. Sure enough, the crowd fell silent. It wasn't until a strange-looking boy ran away in a panic that I signaled Suzanne to drive the car ostentatiously into the village. When I entered the courtyard gate, I happened to run into the boy who had run away coming out of my house. I grinned and ignored his momentary unease. I directly opened the door to the bedroom. My mother and my younger brother weren't there. My father was lying on the bed, trying to calm down his heavy breathing. Obviously, having so Feldweied. He had just come back. At that moment, I suddenly felt the excitement I used to have when I secretly watched TV as a child when the adults were away. Except this time, the roles were reversed. Dad, why are you breathing so heavily? Are you not feeling well? I sat down by the bedside and pretended to be surprised. I just turned over and got tired. You can turn over by yourself now? My father's expression changed slightly. My upper body can move occasionally, but my legs have no feeling at all. Alas, having fulfilled my sigh, I've never had the money to buy good medicine, so I can only endure it. My life is so hard. I clicked my tongue. Is that so? That's really a pity. Before I could finish my sentence, my mother's voice came from outside the room. This child. What's the use of coming back home if she doesn't send money home? Leo followed behind, snorting. Our family doesn't welcome such a person who's being kept by someone. I don't know if she's got some disease or not. Before I could give a signal, Suzanne suddenly stepped forward. With a standard grappling move, he pinned Leo to the ground. And Leo howled in pain. Show some respect to our President Luna. My mother was shocked. What President Luna? Luna. Isn't he the rich guy you're with? I crossed my legs and said leisurely, this is my personal driver and bodyguard. The 3 members of the family stared at each other in surprise. Leo, not knowing what was good for him, Continued to speak, don't think you're so great just because you have some dirty money. You're still relying on being with a rich guy. I haven't settled the score with you for pouring soup over my head last time. My mother quickly interrupted him. What kind of score are we settling as a family? Luna. Since that rich guy of yours is so generous to you, giving you a car and a bodyguard, can you ask him to give you more money? Your father's health is getting worse day by day. I chuckled and turned to ask my father. Your dear son said my money is dirty money. Do you want it? My father didn't have much education, but he was extremely patriarchal. Usually, when he wanted money from me, he would encourage my mother to ask on his behalf. This time, he replied awkwardly, it's not that I can't take it. How can it be considered? I stood up and didn't intend to listen to what he had to say. But I think Dad looks ruddy and doesn't seem to be paralyzed. Mom's big gold bracelet is also very beautiful. And Leo has gained a lot of weight. It seems that you're having a good life. So I can leave with my dirty money with peace of mind. I made a move as if to leave. And suddenly remembered something. Oh. Right. I took out the photo taken by Vivian from my bag. I have a friend who came here for a trip during the summer vacation and accidentally seemed to have taken a photo of my dad standing by the river fishing. I glanced up at 3 pale faces and continued. I even specially bought a car to celebrate my dad's recovery. Now it seems to be a misunderstanding. I'll have to drive the car myself. After saying that, I left with Su Zhengyu without looking back. Behind me, the 3 of them were shouting and arguing continuously. Early the next morning, I was still sleeping in the hotel in the town when I was woken up by a commotion. I opened the door, and my father, my mother, and Leo were standing neatly at the door of my room. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. A medical miracle? My mother was pushed forward and explained ingratiatingly. Luna, actually your father has been doing rehabilitation. When he saw you come back yesterday, he was so excited that he could stand up. Look at that car. I was stunned and exaggerated, exclaimed, wow. For such a big thing, having fulfilled my obsession. Does the United Nations know about it? While my mother was stunned, Su Zhengyu and I each took one of my father's arms and walked away. Leo, followed by my mother, chased after us desperately. Su Zhengyu was tall and strong, and he stuffed my father into the car. Leo, Kedalosai, relying on his sturdy body, inserted himself forcefully and squeezed both himself and my mother into the car. Since you're so willing to accompany, then come along. Su Zhengyu stepped on the gas and drove straight to the police station. On the way, I had already opened a live streaming account of the studio and was waiting for the fans to enter. When my father and the others realized something was wrong, the car had already stopped steadily in the courtyard of the police station. Su Zhengyu pulled my father out of the car, and I held my phone and filmed them. I'm not selling clothes today. The main thing is to get rid of the harm for the people. Uncle Policeman, I want to report that Luna's father, together with his wife, Luna's mother, and his son, Leo, forged medical records, released false information such as paralysis on Yu Chu, and carried out fraud. Everyone, take a look. He's standing here in good health, with a well-groomed face and a fat body. Is this what you call being paralyzed? My father rushed forward to grab my phone, and I dodged several times, making him fall to the ground. My mother and Leo were locked in the car when I got out. For a moment, it was just my father and me playing Eagle Catches Chicken in the whole courtyard. It was just a reversed version of the roles. After a whole morning of fussing around, my father and the others had to stay in the police station for lunch. I guess my father's new fishing rod, my mother's gold bracelet, and Leo's branded shoes will all have to be sold to refund the money raised. They may also face criminal punishment. Mom and Dad, let me, your excellent taxpayer daughter, take care of your prison meals. After finishing this errand, Su Zhengyu and I drove back to our hometown to get the household registration book, preparing to move my household registration out. In just a dozen minutes, my car was decorated with big red flowers and Chinese characters at Xi indicating happiness. Me? Su Zhengyu? I looked at the time. It was approaching noon, and the sound of firecrackers came from the direction of Aunt Wang's house in the village. National Day is indeed a good day for weddings. The thing Aunt Wang is most proud of in her life is having 3 sons. She has given herself some prestige and walks around the village arrogantly all day long. She brainwashes everyone with daughters to marry and have children early, saying that after the age of 20, no one will want them. My parents were among the most poised and by this idea. If I hadn't been busy working during the winter vacation of my senior year of high school to earn medical expenses for my father, I would probably have been married to Aunt Wang's house to have sons. Suzanne Yu looked at me and said, "Shall we go?" I gave a sly smile and got into the car. We drove at full speed all the way. When we looked back after driving dozens of kilometers, there was still a line of puzzled wedding car procession following behind our car. I was laughing so hard in the passenger seat that I was leaning back and forth. Suzanne Yu reluctantly freed one hand to block in front of me, afraid that I would bump into something. At this time, an unfamiliar number called my phone. It took them so long to get my phone number. TSK. I answered the call disapphoingly. Aunt Wan's shrill voice came from the other end. "Oh, you little wretch. Where did you drive the car to? The auspicious time has already passed. How am I going to get married now? For goodness sake." I also raised my voice. Aunt Wang is getting married for the second time? But what does your marriage have to do with me?" It seemed that Aunt Wang had turned on the speakerphone and held the phone away. "Folks, come and judge. What kind of nonsense is this little wretch saying? You drove away the leading wedding car and took the whole motorcade with you, ruining the good time for my second son. How are you going to compensate for that? Oh, it seems that this pile of messy and eyesore things on my car were pasted by you. Just wait. The compensation list will be sent to your house soon. As a wedding gift for your second son. You. And Wang was so angry that her voice was shaking. Your father was right. You shouldn't have been told about borrowing the wedding car. That's so funny. I'm driving my own car. Who agreed to lend it to you as a wedding car? Your parents both agreed. All the folks in the village know that this car is a gift from you to your father. We thought you finally had a conscience. But it turns out that you have a heart full of evil at such a young age." I nestled comfortably in the seat. "Indeed. I advise you not to provoke me. Otherwise, I'll explode right here. And all the evil water will be poured on your family." After saying that, I hung up the phone with a snap. After driving hundreds of kilometers on the highway, the wedding car procession behind finally found a place to turn around. I wonder if, after this day of delay, the wife of the Sek and son of the Wang family will suddenly see the light and decide not to get married. While I was lost in my thoughts, the car had already driven to the door of the dormitory. Luna was standing there with his head down, seemingly waiting for me. I almost didn't recognize him. Was this gaunt and pale person, who looked like a ghost, the affectionate man from a few days ago? I was surprised. It seemed that he and Vivian had had a very sensational quarrel these past few days. He said that Vivian was missing. After talking to me that day, Luna went to find Vivian as usual. They were chatting well at first, but when Luna euphemistically mentioned that dream, Vivian suddenly lost control of her emotions and reacted extremely violently. She first said that she hadn't said something, and then said that even if she had said it, so what? She blamed me for sowing discord at one moment and then cursed Luna and his father as the main culprits at another. Finally, Hedon's a faux and sigh. They had a big quarrel, and Vivian said whatever came to her mind. She completely vented out all the grievances and dissatisfaction she had suffered in the past year. After they parted on bad terms, they never contacted each other again. Luna wanted to go and apologize, but her family said that she hadn't been back. As part of the network of people she had contacted on campus, Suzanne Yu and I were also called to the police station to provide clues. Unexpectedly, while we were making statements, the police received a report. Vivian's body was found. My hand trembled, and half of the water in the cup spilled out. Suzanne Yu was in a hurry to get a tissue to dry it for me. Luna knelt down with a thud and collapsed on the ground. The case was directly upgraded from a missing person case to a homicide case. From that day on, Luna never came to find me again. I felt an inexplicable heaviness in my heart. It's not for anything else. I just didn't expect that in my previous life. Luna said that Vivian passed away unexpectedly after she graduated, and her death seemed to be mentioned casually. In this life, not only did it happen earlier than expected, but the truth turned out to be that she was murdered. 3 days later, I received another notice. The surveillance camera had captured a blurry back view of the suspect. And currently, they were soliciting clues. When Su Zhengyu and I rushed from the studio to the police station, Luna had already watched the surveillance footage and seemed to be on the verge of a mental breakdown. He seemed to be maintaining an outward appearance of normalcy. But in fact, his shirt buttons were fastened incorrectly. His pants zipper was wide open. One pant leg was rolled up and the other was down. His socks were of different colors. And he was even wearing a slipper on one foot. He sat on the chair with his eyes blank, alternating between crying and laughing, looking dull and listless. This state. It felt so familiar. I tried hard to recall, but it was like looking through a fog. And I couldn't see clearly. The police showed us the surveillance video. Just one glance made my heart pound wildly and my throat dry and itchy. It was Luna's father again. In my previous life, Luna and I hadn't reached the stage of discussing marriage. And Luna had never mentioned his family. After learning that I was pregnant, his mother came to see me once. She implied that it was okay to have a baby, but I shouldn't dream of getting married. I was so angry that I wanted to have an abortion. Luna knelt down and begged me while crying. He said he could talk to his mother. But the baby had with great difficulty been reincarnated and found us as its parents. And we shouldn't be so heartless as to abandon it. He comforted me. When the baby is born, we'll get married. What I waited for was his abnormal possessiveness. I don't know what the entanglement was between Luna's father and Vivian. But human life is of utmost importance. I tremblingly took out my phone and flipped to the photos taken on the day of the national competition. Since the photos were of the back view, the police asked me if I had any frontal photos. I shook my head helplessly. Vivian, it's not that I don't want to help you, but I can't help you. Did the words I said that day come true? In the end, you still died because of Luna. Su Zhengyu beside me silently handed me his phone. I have a video here. All eyes turned to him at once. Su Zhengyu was taken aback for a moment and then said to me, I had a hunch that you would need it one day. So I started recording from the moment he knelt down. In the video, Vivian punched and kicked Luna's father. And Luna's father cursed at Vivian, looking as if they had a long-standing grudge. I don't understand what the motive for murder was. I only know that after getting the video, the police's actions suddenly accelerated. Soon, let out a loud sigh. The case was solved. Combining the police announcement and the bits of information I heard at school, I finally sorted out the complex relationships involved. Luna's father married into his wife's family when he was young and had no real ability except for competing with others. Vivian's father, who was young and promising, entered the scene a bit later. But he quickly became a rival that Luna's mother admired. Luna's father tried hard for many years but couldn't compete with Vivian's father in all aspects. And he even received a divorce agreement from Luna's mother. Later, Luna's mother got together with Vivian's father. What's more shocking was that Luna and Vivian also got together. Luna's father was filled with hatred, believing that everything was a conspiracy by Vivian and her father. So, while seeking revenge, he drove at a high speed after drinking alcohol, hit my father, and then quickly fled the scene. After meeting Luna in another place during the summer vacation, he followed him for a long time. When he saw Luna and Vivian quarreling and heard Vivian reveal his hit-and-run incident, the old grudges resurfaced, and his intention to kill gradually grew. Was Vivian innocent? Of course. She was. Did I indirectly push her into the situation of being killed earlier? I don't know. Su Zhengyu handed me an open bottle of water. Everyone has their own destiny. All these things are just the result of cause and effect. Cause and effect? I suddenly remembered the devastated look of Luna in the police station. It gradually overlapped with the scene on the day in my previous life when I told Luna that I was pregnant. On that day, after receiving my call, he also came in such a disheveled state. Calculating the date, I guess it was also on that day in my previous life that he learned the truth that Vivian was killed by his own father. The only difference was that on that day, He leaned against my belly for a long time and murmured, "Baby. You're back." A bitter smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. "Luna. He who sows his own wind will reap the whirlwind. It was you who chose to drag Vivian into this abyss. But this time, she won't be able to be reincarnated into my womb again. In both your previous life and this life, you're destined not to get what you want." Luna dropped out of school. His mental state was extremely terrifying. Sometimes he would suddenly stand up during class and start cursing. Pour vegetable soup over his head while eating. Take off his shoes and gnaw on them while walking on the road. And just giggle no matter who talked to him. Gradually, rumors started to spread in the school that he was not only a natural jinx, but also had inherited his father's murderous genes. And now he had completely gone crazy. Everyone gradually started to stay away from him. Seeing Luna like this, I no longer thought about how to take revenge. When I met Luna at school that day, he didn't recognize me anymore. He walked past me in a trance. And the stench of urine on him was extremely strong. After experiencing what happened to Vivian, I suddenly understood that sentence. The bullet fired unintentionally in youth will hit one's brow many years later. Fate has its own predestination. Because I had the experience of the routines in the live streaming era, my studio received its most powerful feedback in this era. In just 1 year, I left a significant mark on the internet. Suzangu always came to my place to help. Every time he said that being a postgrad student was really tough. That he was like free labor. Tired and poor. And that he came to my place to relax. But seeing him bussing in and out without a moment's rest, it didn't seem like he was here to rest at all. After Suzangu graduated, he gave up a high-paying offer from a leading internet company and joined my entrepreneurial team. I teased him. "Following me, you'll just be part of an unknown self-media. Are you sure you want to give up a position with a future annual salary of millions?" He winked mysteriously and pointed at his head. "I have a strong hunch that the internet industry will face a large-scale layoff wave. And the live streaming industry is about to boom. The whole world will soon come to a standstill for a few years due to public health and safety issues. Those who can survive it will welcome a huge change in the international situation. And those who can't." The light in his eyes dimmed a bit. And various scenes from those years in my previous life flashed in my mind. I understood and couldn't help but smile brightly. I held his hand and said sincerely, "Welcome to a new life." Suzangu regained his relaxed smile and held my hand back, gripping it so tightly. The end.